You left us on quite the cliffhanger. We've all been dying to know what "it's not a lake, it's an ocean" really means.
You and me both.
13 years after his wife went missing in the small town of Bright Falls, author Alan Wake is trapped inside a dark place that he can't seem to write himself out of. As I sit down to type out this review of Alan Wake 2, I can somewhat empathise. It's just so incomparable to anything else I've played in recent memory that it's tough to work out exactly where to start.
I mean, how would you describe it? An auto-fictional thought experiment? A horror story? A postmodern detective story?
Yeah, something like that. But it's also a single-player adventure that seamlessly shifts from slow-burn psychological terror to frantic survival horror action, from gorgeously rendered game worlds to striking full-motion video sequences, and from morbid investigations to show-stopping musical surprises. It's bloody, it's bonkers, and for the most part it's utterly brilliant. Coming in at the tail end of a gaming year packed with absolute bangers, Alan Wake 2 still manages to burn as brightly as a freshly fired signal flare.
I didn't remember much, but I knew my thoughts and ideas could manifest as reality in this dark place.
Spanning two wildly contrasting realities, Alan Wake 2's roughly 17-hour story manages to be far more coherent than that of the original, despite its substantial increase in complexity. We pick things up in present-day Bright Falls, taking control of FBI agent Saga Anderson, who's been dispatched to the small lakeside town to investigate the latest victim in a series of ritualistic slaughters.
The killer left the heart right next to the body.
Saga is an instantly likable addition to the weird world that Alan Wake shares with Remedy Entertainment's other supernatural game, Control. She's fiercely dedicated to her casework, but not above a bit of playful banter with her partner, Special Agent Alex Casey.
Are you thinking of retiring? You know what happens to cops who say this is their last case.
Real funny, Anderson.
And these opening couple of hours of mostly combat-free procedural investigation give the story a realistic grounding before the darkness starts to descend and every placid hillscape transforms into a harrowing hellscape. Part of the reason Alan Wake 2's main serial killer mystery and its numerous subplots are so easy to keep track of is due to the caseboard found in Saga's metaphysical mind place. Each new piece of evidence gathered in Bright Falls and its surroundings must be manually arranged onto a branching tree of red string and palm cards, corralling it all into order and keeping you focused on the case. I'm not ashamed to say that I couldn't get through Season 1 of True Detective without having one eye on my television and the other on a Reddit thread open on my phone, so I loved having this inbuilt method of keeping the facts straight.
This case just became much more complicated.
As Saga's investigation progresses in the early moments of Alan Wake 2's story, each discovery raises more unsettling questions than it answers. Like, why do so many of the locals act as though they've known Saga for years?
I'm sorry. Who are you?
And why is the janitor from Control performing karaoke in a local town hall?
Okay then. Catchy tune.
And why did that corpse suddenly haul his decomposing ass out of the morgue and into the woods? The mystery deepens still when Alan Wake washes up onto the shore of Cauldron Lake, rambling about the dark place and surprised to learn he's been missing for the past 13 years.
13?
Then Alan Wake 2 really gets weird. From here, the perspective shifts back and forth between Saga's search for the truth in Bright Falls and Alan's desperate attempts to escape his doomed dark place dimension, with both sides gradually bleeding into each other in increasingly unpredictable and discombobulating ways.
They act like they've known me for years. This keeps happening.
Before eventually resolving into a supremely well-executed gut punch of an ending that neatly ties off the bulk of the story threads while tantalizingly leaving a handful of loose ones to dangle. The alluring power of its contrasting environments only further enhances its mystery. While the lakeside shores of Bright Falls present some stunning sunset scenes and detail-rich forest surrounds, it's the grimy, neon-soaked New York Plaza setting of Alan's reality that really shows off the immense skill of Remedy's team of artists. This rotten slice of the Big Apple is a haunting otherworld that I found consistently compelling to explore. Alan's stages also stimulated a different part of my brain by introducing some enjoyable environmental puzzles. Using a paranormal desk lamp, Alan can absorb the energy from one light source and redirect it to another to physically alter the world around him and open up new paths forward. It's a dazzling trick and one that grows in complexity over time. Determining the right sequence to manipulate multiple light sources progressively ups the challenge involved in unlocking each new area to examine. In place of gathering evidence like in Saga's stages, in Alan's reality you must seek out plot elements in the form of ghostly hard-boiled scenes from Alan's own Alex Casey crime novel series.
Caldera Street Station. The name made me think of the exit wound of a bullet.
These can then be rewritten into Alan's present scenario to distort his reality into disturbing new dioramas that bring him closer towards the Dark Place's exit.
Things clicked into place. The story rang true.
And here I was thinking Michael Cera was the only Alan desperate to escape a corrupted alternate reality this year.
Not one person would care if Alan was in the real world. In fact, it's happened before. All events sync. Alan.
To make things all the more disconcerting, Alan Wake 2's creative director Sam Lake doesn't just play both the character of Alex Casey in Alan's world and FBI Special Agent Alex Casey in Saga's story, but he also appears as himself in a peculiar late-night talk show that Alan is a recurring guest on. You might not know his name, but you probably know his famous face, since it was plastered on the mug of the original Max Payne. Look, he even does the signature grimace.
Great job, Sam.
Alan Wake 2's heavy meta mystery is like a jigsaw puzzle locked inside a Rubik's Cube that's covered in Sudokus, and it's honestly such a strange and wonderful trip that takes more unexpected detours than a disgruntled Uber driver. Indeed, Alan Wake 2 features more plots than a cemetery and just as high a body count. The fundamentals of combat remain largely the same as the enjoyable flashlight-fueled fighting of the original, but its execution has been enhanced significantly. Enemies are once again literal shadows of their former selves, and the most efficient way to dispatch them is by using the boosted beam of your flashlight to burn away their cloudy darkness shields and blasting disgusting chunks of exposed flesh off their bones. This time around, glowing weak points will occasionally be revealed on an enemy's body, and if you manage to successfully target them, you can inflict substantially more damage and save a few precious ammo rounds in the process, which felt like a nice reward for taking an extra fraction of a second to carefully line up my shots. Both Saga and Alan are blessed with an unlimited sprint ability, which marks a huge improvement to the constantly out-of-puff Alan from the original, and our protagonists are generally more nimble too. The dodge button feels snappier and allowed me to more reliably duck under swinging pipes or thrown pickaxes, and it even works on the ground should you be knocked off your feet, allowing you to quickly roll out of harm's way and avoid any potential follow-up attacks. But challenge is part of the charm of the original, and Remedy has not forgotten that. Saga and Alan may be more fleet-footed in Alan Wake 2, but ammunition and batteries remain scarce. And although it doesn't quite rival Resident Evil 4 in terms of enemy variety, there are enough different gloomy goons to be surprised by that I could never really anticipate which breed of Shadow Warrior was waiting to ambush me down any given path. Some enemies even hurl darkness projectiles that home in on you. I haven't seen this much shade thrown since the last Eminem diss track. There are some wonderfully frantic and distinct boss fights too, including a dimly lit close quarters scrap with a rampaging reanimated corpse who was hell-bent on caving my chest in with the sharp end of a torn off tree branch, and another later on that had me desperately burning away an arena full of darkness blobs while trying to avoid having my head separated from my shoulders by an enemy's rifle shots from afar. Despite the increased challenge these bosses presented, I found that the enemy in Alan Wake 2 that I feared the most was the one that more often not couldn't even hurt me. Alan's reality is littered with whispering apparitions, but 9 times out of 10 they dissipate into wisps of smoke if you train your flashlight on them. It's that 10th instance you need to worry about though. because it's likely to be an actual physical nasty waiting to ambush you from plain sight after you've been lulled into a false sense of security. As a result, I started second-guessing each and every human-shaped shadow, including my own, which felt perfectly in sync with Alan's own unraveling mental state. Alan's mental health isn't the only thing here that isn't as strong as it could be. Although the different arsenals of the two playable characters each boast their own advantages, their individual skill trees seem somewhat lopsided in their implementation. Whereas Alan's Words of Power skill tree features 21 different skills that can each be potentially upgraded up to 3 times over, Saga's upgrades are limited to just 3 buffs for each firearm in her inventory, and each comes at such a high cost of the collectible manuscript fragments hidden around Brightfalls that by the time I'd reached the end credits I'd only invested in a handful of them. Furthermore, and in contrast with Alan's impressive environmental remixing, Saga is regularly saddled with a few too many survival horror stereotypes, like fuse boxes to repair and combination locks to solve, although the latter at least require some pretty creative solutions at times.
I should take a look around for a way to open this thing.
Still, any issues I had with Alan Wake 2 sank without a trace like an out-of-towner in Cauldron Lake, washed away by the torrent of other things it gets right. It undoubtedly takes a lot of inspiration from film and television, taking the Twin Peaks meets Twilight Zone base of the original and mixing in the best bits of True Detective, Seven, Inception, and more into the pot.
Sometimes all of these things at once.
But it also folds in some nods to some modern gaming classics, blindsiding you with truly unnerving Inscription-like fourth wall trickery, and eerie full-motion video moments that recall 2022's found footage freakout immortality. In one truly astonishing early game moment that I don't want to completely spoil here, it even briefly becomes an interactive musical. As though the team at Remedy took one look at the jump-up superstar level from Super Mario Odyssey and decided to appropriate it in the most bombastically bizarre way possible. For a glorious 20 minutes or so, Alan Wake 2 resembles something less like a survival horror video game and more like a Rocky Horror Picture Show. Although Alan Wake 2 has no shortage of out-of-your-seat scares, it's moments like these that prove Remedy has approached the actual design of its long-awaited sequel completely without fear. Alan Wake 2 delivers one of the boldest and most brain-bending survival horror storylines this side of Silent Hill 2, presents it with uniformly immaculate art direction and audio design, and reinvigorates the series' signature light-based shooting as though it's been locked and loaded with a fresh pack of energizers. Even though its skill upgrade systems seem a little superfluous, and there were a few repeated cliches in Saga's story that stuck in my craw, I nonetheless found both sides of this twisted tale to be endlessly fascinating, frequently fear-inducing, and consistently surprising. Alan Wake 2 is a superb survival horror sequel that makes the cult classic original seem like little more than a rough first draft by comparison.
Thank you. That means so much to me.
For more IGN reviews, check out our verdicts on Ghost Runner 2 and Skull Island: Rise of Kong. And for everything else, stick with IGN.